Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is another basketball reaction, and it's a video from SB Nation, who you guys know, he's one of my favourite channels on YouTube to see like videos of. And the title is Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo. Rajon Rondo, I've probably said his name wrong. I'm awful with names, as you guys know. Envy each other, hate each other, and almost got traded for each other. This video comes from yesterday, from the video, the most heated moments in the NBA for the last 3 years, something along those lines. And these two were in the last clip where I think it was the eye poke, and people in the comments were talking about how I missed a few things in the clip, or like how it didn't show certain things. For example, the guy who poked his eye got spat on first, and all these things. Which, I mean, I'm interested to see that, but also that these guys have had like a long lasting beef with each other for like, I think people were saying like 10+ years. And again, people in the comments were saying you need to look more into this beef, or not need to, but you should look more into this beef and see why they hate each other pretty much. And like, beefs like this are very like, I mean, people, there's always like rivalries between players, but from what from what I saw in that clip of like the fight and the spitting and the punching, like or the poking, sorry, them guys must seriously hate each other, and I'm intrigued to see what led to that and see like, I mean, where they are now, I guess, because this video is a year or so old, so it's probably just after the clip actually happened. But yeah, let's get into this and see what this is about. I'm very excited to see. Is excited the right word? Maybe not excited, but I'm interested in seeing like what has led to this, or what led to that fight in the first place, but also what like in the past has happened between those two players for them to hate each other so much. Let's get into this. I apologise for my haircut. My hair is fucked right now. I really need a haircut with all this lockdown. I can't wait till I get one, man. This hair is pissing me off. You're gonna have to deal with this probably for the next month or so. Maybe, I'm not too sure. Hopefully sooner rather than later, when I can get my haircut. But let's get into this and see what this video's got for us.
In October of 2018, the Lakers and Rockets had a little confrontation. It settled down, then suddenly reignited into something way bigger.
Bro.
That's because these two guys got involved, Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo. Their part in this fight was a long time coming.
Okay, I love these guys' videos, man.
Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo are great examples of how much the team that drafts you affects the course of your career. In 2005, Paul was drafted 4th out of Wake Forest by a terrible New Orleans Hornets team. This would be the same year the Hornets began hunkering down in Oklahoma while their home city recovered from Hurricane Katrina. The team improved around their Rookie of the Year point guard, but not enough to make the playoffs. So in the summer of '06, the Hornets made moves, signing sharpshooter Peja Stojakovic, then trading for big man Tyson Chandler. But injuries hampered them, and they still couldn't crack the postseason. The 07-08 season would be the Hornets' breakthrough. They returned to New Orleans. Paul and power forward David West became first-time All-Stars. Byron Scott won Coach of the Year. New Orleans won a franchise record 56 games, made the playoffs, and destroyed Dirk Nowitzki's Mavericks in the first round. In the next round, the Hornets came out strong against the defending champion Spurs, but after leading the series 2-0 and 3-2, lost the round in a heartbreaking Game 7 defeat. The Spurs advanced to the conference finals, where they fell to the Lakers, who went on to the NBA finals and lost to a Boston Celtics team with a kid named Rajon Rondo at point guard. Rondo, like Paul, was a young rising star at his position. Unlike Paul, Rondo had entered the league a relatively unheralded prospect. A mediocre Celtics team acquired him on draft night '06 after he was picked 21st out of Kentucky. While Rondo played his way into the starting lineup his rookie season, Celtics star Paul Pierce missed a bunch of games due to injury. Boston stayed quite bad, winning just 24 games. But while Chris Paul's Hornets had made some nice moves, Rondo's Celtics got a makeover of historic magnitude. They traded their lottery pick for Ray Allen, made an even bigger trade for Kevin Garnett a few days later, then made the greatest turnaround in NBA history, finishing with 66 wins just a year after winning 24.
Oh my days!
And then they won it all.
Anything's possible!
Yo, those fans must have been like, bro, like the year before this, they must have been like, oh, we're not going anywhere, man. This sucks. A year later, you're the best team in the league. How things can change so damn quick.
Rondo went from promising rookie on a garbage team to starting point guard on a champion.
Wow.
It was pretty wild. So now we're in the summer of '08, which is an important juncture because according to more recent accounts, that's when the beef began. After that 2018 Rockets-Lakers fight, some reporters pointed back to the 2008 Olympics, where Paul led the USA to a gold medal, while Rondo supposedly didn't make it past tryouts.
Oh, man.
Reports from the time say Rondo was invited to the select team, the younger players who scrimmage against Team USA before competition. Rondo and fellow Celtics youngster Kendrick Perkins understandably declined the invitation after playing NBA games well into June.
Okay,
and Rondo would never have
Makes
made
sense.
an Olympic roster that ended up featuring Paul, Jason Kidd, and Darren Williams. But it is possible he was annoyed to have been left off the list of over 30 finalists, which dropped days before the Celtics won their championship and included point guards like Luke Ridnour and Kirk Heinrich. I don't know why Rondo would hold that against Paul in particular. He may have noticed that Paul got a big contract extension that July, but so did Darren Williams. Guys drafted in 05 were due for new deals, nothing special there. And there had been no visible beef in meetings up to this point either. Rondo made his NBA debut in an uneventful loss against Paul and the Hornets. He got his first win against Paul in March of that championship season, and Paul actually went out of his way to praise his slightly younger opponent.
So at the moment, it's not really leading to any sort of real beef. It's just sort of youngsters making their own sort of ways, and certain players' careers don't go the way they want. Like how he didn't make the Olympic team, or if he didn't actually want to play in it. I'm guessing that's up for discussion. But so far, I'm not really sensing any sort of heated sort of confrontation or anything like that.
So did beef exist in 08? It's possible, but it might be one of those things where NBA insiders know more than we do. Either way, Rondo was eager to prove critics wrong and claimed to have done so by winning a ring in 08. None of those other young point guards had done the same. And while Boston once again cracked 60 wins, the Hornets regressed in 2009. Paul was healthy and effective. He missed just 4 games because of a groin strain, returning right in time to lose to the Celtics again. But injuries assured New Orleans wouldn't come anywhere near the prior season's playoff run. Paul was considered by most the best point guard in the NBA, but this 4th season backslide began a long chapter of playoff disappointment in his career. And guess who predicted all that disappointment right to Paul's face? Rondo, obviously.
Oh no.
The Hornets and Celtics met in November of 09, and things went pretty typically. Paul played great despite some physical defense from Rondo, but Boston got the win yet again. The pair also picked up technicals for wrestling a little bit, and whatever tension built during the game snapped afterward. The typical round of post-game handshakes got heated when Rondo confronted Paul on the floor.
Oh man.
The two had to be separated, and we later found out why. Rondo had trash-talked with Paul by saying, and this is a direct quote, "I've got a ring and you're never going to win."
That's got to be a tough one to take.
Which, I'm talking to you over 9 years later, and that statement remains true to the word. Paul didn't even reach a conference final until his 13th season. But anyway, Paul didn't like that comment and stewed for a while. Some reports said he bickered with Boston assistant Tom Thibodeau and tried to enter the Celtics locker room, though Paul later denied all of that. Inside that locker room, Celtics PR demanded Rondo never be asked about Paul, ever. This exchange epitomized the theme of this beef. Rondo had a ring, and he was days away from agreeing to a big extension of his own. But he still wasn't considered on Paul's level, and some judged his individual success.
Paul was seen as a better player, but Rondo's the one with the sort of accolades and sort of the trophies, etc. To go with the. I think I just malfunctioned there. To go with the. I mean, so I'm guessing in future, when people look back to see that he's got the ring, and the other guy, Chris Paul doesn't have the ring to sort of back up his points. Because people do look at that. People look at success and trophies in a big way. But it's interesting to see that Paul is he's seen as the better player, right?
Yes, as very much a product of the incredible team around him.
I guess the team around you does make a
Paul
big
himself
influence.
wouldn't praise Rondo without that slight qualifier. And people around the league, both media and Rondo's own coach, dismissed the comparison. But Paul's individual superiority kept getting rubbed in. While the Celtics were visiting New Orleans later that season, Paul was out with a knee injury, but the Hornets trotted him out pregame to announce he'd been selected for Team USA again.
Okay.
Paul didn't end up joining that 2010 FIBA championship roster, yet
Players, oh boy. Oh, look at those players. I mean, I'm not going to say I recognise all of them, but I obviously see Curry, Westbrook, Derrick Rose, and KD. Man, that's so sick seeing these guys all as young players, man. That's so cool. Look how different they look as well.
even without Paul ahead of him, Rondo couldn't make it. He was invited to training camp in Athens, but saw limited playing time in exhibitions, guessed where things were headed, and withdrew from the team before they could cut him. And that was it for Rondo's Team USA career. The 2012 Olympics happened smack in the middle of his prime, but he had no more interest in trying to make the cut again among higher regarded point guards. Anyway, something else more important happened during Rondo's prime. In 2011, Rondo became an All-Star for the first time.
Okay.
But his Celtics had been treading water. After winning that championship in Rondo's second season, they had made the finals only once, falling in 7 to the vengeful Lakers. Boston wanted another title before the window closed on their aging Big Three. And with LeBron James fronting an even stronger Big Three in Miami, it was clear the existing roster couldn't get it done. On top of that, there was some internal strife. Rondo and backcourt mate Ray Allen weren't getting along, and Rondo sometimes bristled at the demands of Celtics coach Doc Rivers. So, in November 2011, with the NBA lockout about to end, Celtics GM Danny Ainge got on the phone to discuss trading Rondo for Chris Paul.
Wow.
Several versions of the trade were discussed, and the rumors reached...
Bro, for Rondo, that's got to be tough to take. You've been like gloating to him saying, oh, I've got all these championships and you've got nothing. And now they're like, oh, okay, we want him for you now. That must have fucking pissed him off. I'm sorry for the swearing, but that must have pissed him off. He's got to leave at this point.
Full-on Woj tweet status. It once again became a thing to compare the two players, and you even had people like Shaq, who'd briefly been a Celtic before retiring, arguing that Rondo was the better point guard, citing as evidence the greater success his team had achieved. Ultimately, the trade fell through. Word at the time was that Paul wasn't willing to commit to Boston long-term. But according to Ray Allen's 2018 autobiography, Coach Rivers vetoed the trade because he couldn't do that to his old friend, Hornets coach Monty Williams. I think the implication here is that Rondo's personality might be tough for a coach to manage, which does seem to be the case, but Ray Allen might be a slightly biased source here. After a big mess, Paul got dealt to the Clippers.
Okay.
The first time Rondo visited CP3 in his new home, the two exchanged a polite handshake with nary a sign of beef. And the feud kinda settled for a while. Injuries ended Rondo's time as an All-Star, as did the gradual dismantling of the once champion Celtics. One noteworthy part of that dismantling came in summer 2013, when Doc Rivers left Boston and took a job coaching Chris Paul and the Clippers.
Oh, man.
Rivers, who had been a point guard in his playing days, was as tough on Paul as he'd been on the young Rondo, which raised comparisons again. Rivers was also the Clippers' senior VP of basketball ops for a while and brought in several former Celtics to complement his core of Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan, which will be relevant later. In December 2014, Boston finished their demolition of the 2008 championship team by dealing Rondo to the Dallas Mavericks. That began a chapter of Rondo's career spent bouncing from team to team, battling coaches along the way. In 2017, days after Paul got traded to the Rockets, Rondo signed with Paul's old team in New Orleans, now called the Pelicans. This stint brought the beef back into focus a bit. First of all, Rondo was joining forces with his good friend DeMarcus Cousins, who has his own beef with Paul. Second of all, Rondo broke Paul's single-game franchise assist record, which is kind of fun. And third of all, they actually beefed a little bit in a game Rondo didn't even play. Rondo was out for rest when the Rockets visited New Orleans on March 17, 2018, but managed to pick up a technical from the bench by getting into a verbal argument with Paul. So that was a hint the feud still lived, but as of October 20th of that year, we didn't need any more hints. Rondo and Paul had been battling all night, and when things got heated, they gravitated toward one another. Then they argued, and Rondo maybe spit at Paul a little bit.
That's
then
mad. Paul spitting on people is I don't know if I can see this, but I'm guessing it was really hard to sort of notice it. But spitting on people just in general is fucking something that I really, really don't understand.
And Rondo maybe spit at Paul a little bit. Then Paul poked Rondo in the face, and then they punched each other a little and got suspended. A lot of attention was spent zaprootering the footage to determine whether or not Rondo spit and whether it was on purpose.
It clearly looked like Rondo spit in his face.
And elsewhere, people were sorting out a reported confrontation between a Rondo family member and Jada Paul, Chris's wife. But for our purposes, the most interesting fallout came from something Rondo said after the fight. Quote, "Everyone wants to believe Chris Paul is a good guy. They don't know he's a horrible teammate. They don't know how he treats people." To be clear before we dig in here, Rondo has a reputation for being abrasive and at times outright abusive.
Wow.
But I don't know where he gets...
Was that like slur? Wait, so Rajon Rondo had leaked from us. Rajon Rondo apologises to NBA reference over anti-gay says, bro. Okay.
and at times outright abusive. But I don't know where he gets the idea that Paul is considered an angel. Paul's own falling out with Doc Rivers was widely reported, and he's got well-known beefs and ugly incidents in his past too. In any event, Rondo's comment about Paul immediately invited analysis from people who know both players, which, because Doc was running the Clippers for a while, is a lot of people. Jeff Green and Pierce just said the fight was a long time coming.
The confrontation I did see coming. I knew it was a matter of time.
I'm surprised that this is their first fight, actually.
Others actually offered judgment. Big Baby Davis said he'd played with both, and Paul was indeed a bad teammate. Ryan Hollins said that Paul, his former Clippers teammate, had some growing to do, and went on to say Rondo was one of his favorite teammates ever, which is a little funny because he only played 15 games in Boston. Like, Hollins definitely did the same Getty Images search that I did, and that one photo is the only evidence that those two were ever teammates. Rockets GM Daryl Morey doesn't really count here because he left the Celtics front office right before they drafted Rondo, but he chimed in to suggest Rondo calling Paul a bad teammate was the pot calling the kettle black. Or he was just tweeting some nice artwork for funsies, also possible. Doc Rivers, who might be the authority on the matter, didn't issue a ruling on who's the worst teammate, but did reflect on the decade of confrontation, and wonder aloud how it all started. Is it really just that Rondo coveted Paul's status as the best point guard? I don't know, Doc. It certainly adds up. Rondo was excellent at his peak, but never quite at Paul's level, at least not according to anyone but Shaq.
Definitely the more
but it took Rondo just 2 years to collect the ring Paul's chased for over a decade. Individual accolades for one and team glory for the other could generate enough mutual envy to fuel a beef. Of course, fuel needs ignition, so is there an incident somewhere in the past that we don't know about?
Yes.
Or is it simply that both these guys are prone to acting like jerks? The Paul Rondo beef is a mysterious one, but everyone agrees. It is old, it is real, and it is alive.
This is a
if
really
you want to learn more
video,
about another
I love these sort of in-depth, these in-depth stories that I just sort of you wouldn't really see them without YouTube, but then you see them and it's like, bruh, some of this stuff's wild. And I'm just seeing this. Chris Paul knows everyone, but especially DeMarcus Cousins. So that's the beef that they're talking about as well. Maybe I should see more of these because Chris Paul seems to have a lot of enemies from his teammates who said Rondo was a better teammate, or his old school teammates that he played with. They were saying Rondo was a better player to play with than Chris Paul. A lot of people seem to hate him, but for someone who's still learning about basketball, I would say Chris Paul is the more recognizable name. He's a name that I hear about quite a lot as a top player. And this is not me saying Rondo isn't, but he's just a more familiar name for me to know. But this is just an interesting sort of thing. That spit though, I didn't see that in the first clip. If he did do that, I mean you can see it. You can see it. It looks like he did. Bro, that's the lowest of the low, man. When I see stuff like that, it makes me cringe so bad. I'm like, bro, why? But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see more SB Nation basketball beef videos, rewind videos, just let me know which kinds of ones you'd like to see. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe, peace.